thank you all for joining us today. If you came for gap analysis workshop, you're in the right place. My name is Linda Wayne. I'm the NSGIC Data for the Nation project manager, and my partner in crime and elevation and hydrography is Phil Worrell. He is the project engineer. Just a few logistics. The workshop is being recorded, so please be aware. And if you would, go into the chat and add your name and organization. That'd be very helpful for us. In addition to that, as we proceed, please enter your questions into the chat. And I think we'll try and take them, Phil, as we go through. So if you or I want to interrupt the others saying there's a chat, that's fine, but we'll go through at the end as well. Maybe we should just go through at the end. Let's just go through at the end. Okay. I think we changed the whole dynamic there. Very good, thank you. One other thing I wanted to mention, I need to add to the slide. I see a lot of names of folks, and I'm very excited to have this crew with us that are not registered for the workshop. So your registration really helps us as far as like understanding who's coming to the meeting and participation. So if you didn't register the workshop, somebody passed you the information, that's fine. But if you could in the future, make a point of registering in advance, that would help us out. Ouachita Parish, and George Helene is here today. That's exciting. Oh, good. We've got Idaho. Margie, I'm going to ask you to go off mute. Did you work with and excuse my pronunciation, the Kootenai River project? Were you involved with that at all? All right, we'll go ahead and proceed, and I'll give you a reminder a little later. If you haven't added your name and organization, we'd appreciate that. So, as you all know, this is the second in a series of workshops, so I'm going to do a quick overview. Not a lot of detail here, but pretty straightforward stuff. What is data gap analysis? Well, basically it's the identification, assessment, and then addressing of areas with no coverage for a specific data theme. You want to map your current state, your desired state, what the gap is between, and then how do you mitigate those gaps. And what this does is it enables you, the whole goal is to develop site-specific strategies for completing your data coverage. So why do 3-depth gap analysis? Well, as most of you know, excuse me just a second. The national 3-depth program objective is 3-depth, which is QL2 or better, national coverage, acquired or in progress by 2023. However, things are simply not going to simply end at that point. So we need to begin planning now for what the next phase of 3-depth data maintenance and updates look like. So this is sort of phase 1 of that effort. And I just want to make a point as you look at this map that, you know, even those with few gaps need strategies for acquisition, because sometimes the smallest gap can be the most challenging. So you might have a nice green state there with one white blotch, and that might be a real tough nut to crack. Or you may have large gaps, a lot of white, and some of those may be addressed by a single solution. So the idea is that the amount of white space does not necessarily drive the need here. As I mentioned, this is a series of workshops. We're doing them in alternating months. We started in February with the NSGIC mid-year meeting. We're doing that workshop here in April. We'll do one in June, and possibly one after that. I'll talk in a minute. But the workshop is based on a step-by-step approach. It's based on working collaboratively to explore gap reasons and strategies. In other words, we're not coming at you with some prescription for how this is done. We want to work collectively to look at reasons and strategies, and we want to support you in a custom approach. And Phil's going to emphasize that today as he talks about the process. And it also includes interim activities, homework, that we ask you to do that provides content for the next workshop. So you'll see how we're going to utilize that here. I say that we have workshops planned February, April, and June, and then we have an alternative whether we would have a possibly a showcase of plans of action or showcase of strategies in August, or possibly submit a presentation for the NSGIC annual conference. So just depending on how things go and what people's response is, we may be able to do that. Oh, I just realized I'm talking from my notes slide and never showed you the actual slide. So that's what I was just talking about. Sorry about that. I have to keep the two in coordination. So I mentioned that it includes some interim activities that provide content for the next workshop. So we're going to do a quick homework check. Phil, you want to take this one?
Sure. At the end of the last workshop, we asked everyone to go visit the US IEI website, which is the link there, and we had also provided a custom link. So, the question is, if you did that, did the information you saw for your state reflect your understanding of your 3-depth coverage? And if not, what were the differences? And we're just looking for a little, ad hoc feedback here to get a sense of what you guys found. Anybody?
Yeah, this is Kent in Kentucky. Yeah, that map has not for a long time reflected the current status of what we have here in the Commonwealth.
And why not, Kent? What's missing or different?
It shows that we don't have coverage in certain areas where we have statewide coverage. The vast majority of which is QL2. It also doesn't account for some recent projects that were actually completed within the past calendar year. It's been that way a while, and I've communicated that to USGS multiple times.
So is some of that data projects that are not, say, would not be classified as 3-depth, or is there something else going on?
All the data has been offered to USGS. 3-depth funding was not utilized for 100% of our first pass, but USGS did contribute in certain program years.
Okay, all right. Anyone else have similar or different experience? Come on. All right. Well, we're going to come back to USIEI later in the workflow, but look forward to finding out the reasons where the information at the national level differs from what you have at the state level, and I think both Linda and I are very interested in helping figure out how we can bring the information together. And part of that,
so this is Nate Roth from Department of Conservation. Wasn't specifically in response to this. In the past, we have identified footprints within the US IEI that may have been collected and may either have incorrect classification as their quality level, or that may have come in as being proposed, but that hadn't actually made it far enough that they should truly have made it through to show in the IEI.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Phil, would you like to talk a little bit about the recent work done, the redesign?
Sure. It's a couple months ago, NOAA released a new version of it, and it does have the user interface. I feel is significantly improved to help you identify the projects that fall in the geographic area. The one little gotcha I found was, I say searched, well, here's an example, Maine, USA, It zooms in and to the geographic area, but the projects that are collected or presented on the right side are actually whatever project fits into the map display, which may or may not be in Maine. So it depends on how close or how far out you're zoomed in. But I found that was very easily solved by digitizing just a simple polygon inside my state boundary, and that reduced the selection to exactly those projects that were geographically within the state. At that point, I found that the US IEI exactly reflected, at least for Indiana, the status of our state projects. So I was pretty pleased because previous incarnation did not. So I know there's been a lot of improvements, but so one of the things we might want to do is figure out going forward a feedback mechanism for keeping this up to date or reflecting what the states have. And I think we can make that part of the gap analysis workflow is a feedback loop, because you're going to go to all that trouble figuring out what you got and how you're going to fill it in. We better figure out a way to share it.
All right, thank you. All right, so speaking of our last workshop, we had an activity last time where we asked folks to put up Post-its about what were the reasons that they were aware of for gaps in their coverage. And so we had a nice array of these, and we're going to build on that now. We've taken those and we've organized them into some category. I'm going to put a Jamboard gap link in the chat. I have so many windows. I am rich with windows. And I'm going to ask you to go to this activity. I'm going to do a new share now. And we're going to go over these categories and see if we got them right.
There's nothing in the chat yet, Linda.
Oh, there's nothing in the chat? Oh, you have to hit enter after you put the link in, apparently.
There we go.
And I am finding not getting good graphics on my share. Something is called whiteboard. Let's see if that works.
Definitely a whiteboard.
Are you seeing?
No, I'm just seeing a whiteboard.
Just seeing a whiteboard. Well, we don't want that.
Yeah.
Let me go drive back and try again. We'll get this figured out by the 4th workshop. Don't you all worry. It is not showing up on my list of things to show you. Or is it? And I'm just not seeing it.
There you go.
Now we're here. All right, so what we did is we took your input from the last workshop and we created these categories. And we're just going to go through them not quickly, but we're going to go through them and ask you to look over. We'll read over each one. This funding is obviously the biggest. See if that covers your territory. And if not, feel free to add a new one. Grab one of those sticky notes down there, add your own. If it does relate to one of the other ones, just go ahead, as you see this example here, just put the letter for the one it relates to. So maybe here with differing budget cycles, we just wanted to clarify that this is a case where the state can't roll money over. So I'm inviting the participants to please come in, take a look. I'll talk a little bit about the ones we have, but feel free to add your own. If we run out of sticky notes here, you'll see over on the left, if you've not used Jamboard before, Over here, this is a little sticky note and you can just generate your own. Please don't use the pen and start scratching over things and all that, just because erasing those is really hard. So, obviously a lack of funding at the state level is a primary issue. Lack of funding at the local level. I know a lot of you have tapped out your local and regional governments. Rural areas. This idea of different budget cycles, and there are some solutions there, at least with regards to USGS and their ability to take money outside of your budget cycle. Maybe the problem is that you just really don't have money to coordinate the effort. There's no money to put together a work group or a coordinator or something at that level. Maybe you have federal lands and right now there's no federal funds identified for capturing those lands. Or perhaps you have private landholders and they're just not willing to contribute to the project. So I'll open it up. Does anybody have other things here with regards to funding? Think about the gaps in your state. Think about the things that, you know, your state that you're dealing with. See if do these resonate? Are there things about funding that aren't here that you would add, or are there any qualifications or refinements you'd like to make to any of these? And feel free to talk too. It's a workshop, it's not a presentation. Does anybody have specifics about their state funding, like something that's not working for them as far as okay, so locals have data, they don't think they need it. So we'll get to that in a later session too, whether they don't need they don't need a higher quality, or they don't maybe realize what can be done with the additional data. That's on another list. All right. We'll go ahead and move on to the second one, but I'm going to give you this link in the notes and you can always come in and add something later if it occurs to you, or if you'd like to spend more time with this. The reason I say this is the reasons that we generate here, we will use to build our strategies next time. So there's a lot of issues with lack of support. Sometimes the regional stakeholders don't support it because they don't have the capacity to use the data. And again, these are your comments. Not all stakeholders need higher quality data. Or perhaps it's just low population density in these areas, so it's hard to generate support. I think we can expand on the capacity to use the data, whether that's training or education or software, or well, we had a lot more sticky notes last time. I guess we already ran this one. Anybody dealing with low population densities? Am I on mute, Phil? No. All right. And if something occurs to you from a previous one, feel free to add it on any of these pages. A lot of time there's communication challenges. You know, it's hard to track federal interest, especially in proposed work and interest for future projects. Maybe you don't have a central point of contact, a 3-dep coordinator, one person that can field these things and move them through. Or maybe there's just no mechanism, or you have difficulty in identifying and soliciting partners. Now, these I know can be filled out a little bit more. You know, an example of other is maybe you just don't have access to decision makers, so you're not able to get your admin on board. Okay, different time scales. Excellent. Okay. Can you elaborate on that? Do you mean timescales.
That was me. This is Josh Henrikin with the Idaho LiDAR Consortium. Just some federal things might have deadlines that come up faster than local partners can
Okay. So putting
get
the,
them to join, or
okay, so putting the team together and the proposal and all that with timelines can be challenging. Opportunity.
everybody might have the same interests, but not the same, or the same urgency.
Gotcha. Grabbing some notes. Anybody else with regard to communication and sort of knowing who needs what, where, and why? Again, this is other than funding. Really, it's about finding areas of interest and common shared areas of interest.
So Linda, this is Sue. I don't know if we're in a place where we want to dig deep into these reasons, but at some point I'd sure want to have a conversation around tracking federal interests and what we can do better to help folks track on federal interests. So at whatever point we want to have that conversation, that would be great.
Yes, Sue, the next phase of this, we will take these one by one and try to generate strategies. What are some strategies for tracking federal interest? And we could preload it with any information you have.
Excellent. Yeah, I definitely would like to hear, what we can do better, different, whatever, to help make sure those are clearer and easier to keep track of. So of course you have a strategy session set up. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. All right, if there's no more communication issues that come to your mind immediately, and again, I'll distribute this if you need to digest it a little bit. Access limitations and restrictions. I know some of you are dealing with tribal lands, military installations, and there are geographic challenges as well, such as forest cover and things like that. If you have any access limitations and restrictions, if you'd like to expand upon this, I'm in particularly the geographic challenges is interesting to me. I know there are other features than forest cover. If anybody has geographic challenges they want to add to the list. And again, Sue, I think there'll be a good opportunity to talk about things like tribal lands and how we can approach it, because I know USGS has specific outreach to the tribal community. Any other boy, feel like I should sing and dance a little or something. All right, I realize I am just throwing this at you. All right, and then finally, a little bit about the next steps. We're going to recompile the results. Doesn't look like we have a lot of work to do. And we'll use those to generate strategies during the next workshops. We'll look at these individually and then try and brainstorm on those. There's sticky pads here if you have any comments or questions about what our next steps are, or why we're doing this, or just questions about the activity in itself.
So Linda, that link and this document stays open, right?
Yeah, I will leave it open and I will send it. This is again why it's helpful if you register, because we can send it out to all the folks that were registered for the conference, for the workshop. We'll also send it out through the 3-Dep interest group, let you know the recording, all the materials, things like that. So yes, we'll leave this document open, and you can, if you wanted to take a little more time and go through it, we'll set a deadline so we have time to prepare for the next workshop as well. Good point, Phil. All right. Well, with that, because we're moving so well, let me do something here real fast. Let's get into the main event then. Phil's going to give us talk a little bit about the gap analysis process, and we're going to move over and share with him. If I can get my controls back.
I think I'm there.
Oh, you've got it?
Yeah, excellent. I grabbed it.
Look at you.
Are you seeing my screen? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So we want to talk about in the process overview here, some suggested approach or steps. And what I'm suggesting here is kind of a full range of options. A lot of this came from some great work and examples we've seen done by the state of Washington in their LiDAR plan. And we recognize, though, that, you know, every state is at a different point in their process. You could potentially, you know, use all 5 of these steps and go through them methodically, or you can cherry pick the components and the most relevant steps that you need to complete your analysis. But in the next series of slides, I tried to lay it out from scoop to nuts, from A to Z, whatever you want to call it, to take you through, and would encourage any questions as we go through or at the end. Again, the examples here are mostly courtesy of the Washington State LiDAR Plan. Also, NOAA's Interagency Working Group has a pretty cool tool for spatial mapping priorities that I'm going to show a little bit. And of course, the USGS 3DEP program, the many maps and data that's available there. I've used these all as the examples here. So we'll dive into it. Again, I said there were 5 steps. The first 3 are basically getting ready to do your analysis and planning. You know, creating some maps and getting those gap areas prioritized, and then jumping into the plan. I'm going to go into each one of these in much more detail. So, creating your statewide LiDAR coverage map. I'm calling it Map 1, and identifying 3 different layers. Now, having said 3 different layers, they don't have to be 3 different layers. They can be the same layer with different attribution. Leave that totally up to you guys. But in the example here, just to keep the context simpler, I broke it up into separate layers and separate maps. But the examples we're going to be looking at here are from the state of Washington again, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on those. Before we jump into that, though, I really want to recommend using the following information resources as you start doing this. And we had the homework assignment with using the USIEI inventory map. There's a link there for it if you haven't visited it before. But it's a good framework, a starting point for at least understanding what our federal partners understand as being LiDAR coverage in your geography. We also have USGS's 3DEP. The BAA process publishes every year current maps for that program year, and they are multiple maps. There's one example consolidated map shown down there below, but there are individual map links available for all the major federal partners, and shapefiles as well for each one of them. So when you're looking at tracking federal interest, or trying to understand what federal interests there are, specifically for a program year, that's your go-to source. The next source is the C-Sketch status and planning map, and that's more the long range federal interests are tracked there. So what you might see on the BAA maps is a subset of, say, what NOAA or FEMA or someone is looking for in that program year, but there are often, you know, other out-year projects or interest areas that are identified in C-Sketch. And so when you're looking for those federal partners, that's a great source to go look at and see what polygons intersect or cover your geography. And last but not least is your state 3-depth status and planning maps. And those are really the key for sources that you want to use to do this and creating those layers. Again, I'm using the state of Washington here. Thank you much to Joanne Markert and for these resources. It's a great example. They were an early adopter of LiDAR, back in the 90s. So they've been at this a while. But as the technology and the data resolution and accuracy has improved, they've also gone through some changes in their needs and their desires as they've been attempting to cover their state LiDAR with LiDAR. What we're seeing here is their version of layer 1, showing all existing LiDAR data in their state. And I want to point out that this is both 3-depth data and other LiDAR data. They have a number of data holdings that have been collected or in the process of being collected that are not necessarily specifically targeted 3-depth. So this is a map of everything the state is looking at, doing both 3-depth and other. And that's a key distinction that we'll come back to a little bit later. And I think many states are in the same boat, that they have LiDAR collections, but they're not necessarily that meet the 3-depth specification. So that then becomes the subset map, if you will, of what are those coverages that are specific to meet the 3-depth specification. And that's a subset of that data. And it also then includes not just the existing ones, but the ones that you've got in progress. And so that's another attributed layer of showing your, or separate layer showing your in progress LiDAR data projects. And so that's an important part of helping identify the gaps is figuring out not only what you got, but what you're working on. And then also what you are planning. Everybody has got multi-year plans going on with respect to these framework data layers. And I'm sure a number of you have projects already planned and maybe even budgeted and to a certain extent funded and ready to go into the hopper for the next project cycle. So it's important to map those as well because they take on a different aspect in your gap analysis. So once you have that, now it's time to make your gap maps. Now you know everything that you've got, that's in progress, and that you've planned. So I've got two basic steps there: creating a gap layer, and then attributing the layer with all the good reasons of why you have those gaps and how to fill them. So take a look at Washington again. What you're seeing here in the yellow is really all the different types and flavors of gaps that they have. These include that where no LiDAR data currently exists, where they have existing LiDAR data, but it may be out of date, or that the quality level of that LiDAR is not up to the 3-depth specification, or in general, they need a higher accuracy LiDAR for their applications. And also in the case that we heard an example in the last workshop from Washington, that they had LiDAR that could meet 3-depth specification, but had not been submitted. It had not been done under the BAA or the USGS project, but basically needed to be submitted to the USGS for certification and inclusion into 3-depth. So those are all the different kinds of flavors. And so what you basically do then is take those reasons and with some other criteria, and you split and combine your gap polygons, based on these both political, geographic, and other criteria, including the steepness or forest cover or land cover, who owns the land and is responsible for it. We saw the low population density as being one of the reasons for gaps identified earlier. So it may make sense to identify or break up some of these polygons, larger areas into smaller areas based on some of these criteria, basically to help you start putting some reasons behind and finding some interest behind filling in those gaps. Obviously, it's a myriad of different reasons for these, but the more clearly you can define them and then attribute them accordingly, the better off I think you're going to be in your planning process going forward of figuring out how to fill them in. So here we're seeing an example of Washington with those reasons. So what you end up with is at this point, you've got a couple different maps, and you're getting ready now to really do your analysis. You've got a map with all your LiDAR coverage, and you've got a map with all your LiDAR gaps for all the different various reasons. And you not only have you should have your state LiDAR gaps, but you should also then be able to distinguish out what specifically are your 3-depth gaps. And this is important because if you're going to leverage the USGS BAA process, these are the areas that you're going to want to be proposing as part of the BAA proposal to get federal partnerships and funding to fill them. So it's not that you're forgetting about the other areas, it's that you're using this as a focus to help basically turn that USGS national map all green at the end of the day and get some help doing, getting that work done. So now we've got all our data collected, and so step 3 I'm suggesting is you now want to do some type of gap prioritization survey or app. Basically, it allows your partners and your end users to review and vote and help you then prioritize how you're going to fill these remaining gaps in your state. I'm going to show you a couple techniques. The first is a very simple survey respondents assign a low, medium, high, a 1, 2, 3 score to each polygon. And then at the end of the survey, you simply accumulate those scores and identify then in a new layer what those gaps are. Again, example from Washington here of doing exactly that to come up with the rankings. And now this is an initial gap prioritization survey. This isn't your final. You haven't really done any analysis yet. You've just reached out to your user community to see where the most interest is. Now, if you've got a more complex or large geographic area, the NOAA's interagency working group has this really cool spatial mapping priorities tool. Now they use it a lot for offshore or coastline bathymetry data, where you don't have a lot of geographic boundaries, and you can use 100 kilometer or 10 kilometer or 1 kilometer grid cells and identify where your interests are. But the same basic concept can be used for large geographic areas in your state that you're looking to fill. And obviously not using a 100 kilometer grid cell, but something like the 1 kilometer grid would be a logical way. And then the same idea is that the users then vote, select the cells that they're most interested in, and then that becomes a way for you to identify the priorities. This is definitely an optional step. I would believe that NOAA would be more than happy to share their prioritization tool with folks and understand how that it works. And it's been used in quite a few different places along in the NOAA realm to fill in their mapping priorities. So it's getting some good exercise. But the nice thing about it is at the end of the day, you get a nice, simple, thematic map showing you where the hot spots are, where people are interested in the new LiDAR data, and that can help you then prioritize filling in those gaps going forward. Obviously, a multi-year approach in many cases. So at that point, you're ready to create your action plan. And I've identified 5 steps here from budgeting to discussing acquisition issues and approaches, and ranking your final gap polygons, and then updating your map and your plan. We'll go through those in a little bit more detail. The budget can be as simple as putting a spreadsheet together with every one of your polygons that you defined in your gap, on your gap map, getting the square miles from them, giving them some type of terrain classification, identifying what quality level LiDAR you're seeking to acquire in that area, and then using a cost per square mile figure that most likely the simplest thing would be to look at your previous projects in your state and look at your cost for similar type terrains and geographies, and get that initial budget estimate put together so that you've got some initial sense of what type of money you're looking at to fill these gaps in. This is not a replacement for eventually getting either USGS estimates, or if you're doing a cooperative agreement, going out and working with the vendors specifically to get estimates for this work. But it at least gives you a starting point to figure out if you're talking about a $1 million effort to fill all your gaps, or a $7 million effort. But then you can start to develop your approaches to addressing those gaps. And here I go back to the map example. There is C-Sketch. And again, there's multi-year polygons of interest from all the federal partners shown on C-Sketch. So you can dive into your state and look at longer term federal partners potentially for helping you fill in your gaps. And at that point, you also look at your feasibility internally within your state. And finally, you then tweak those priorities based on the feasibility of your approach and the other factors that you have. So you basically are coming out of it with a more refined set of priorities for your map. One of the really nice things that Washington did was simplify this down into a simple map and a chart that could be easily consumed by their user community. So with not only updating the map layer, but also updating their state plan to reflect these things going forward. And that really ends up being the final step in here, is to publish those layers that you've created in this gap analysis to your LiDAR state plan, and be prepared to revisit and repeat this process at whatever detail necessary over the next couple years as you work to fill in those gaps. And ongoing in that is also to collect areas of information of other areas of interest from your user community. This will be in the slide deck. If you haven't already seen the Washington State LiDAR Plan story map, I strongly encourage you to click on this link later and visit it. It's beautifully done. It not only tells the need, but it educates users in the need of, or the use of LiDAR, and why it's necessary, and how it benefits the state. And it also, at the end of it, seeks input from folks that are engaged or interested in simply filling out a survey and identifying where they think they need additional bathymetric or other types of LiDAR might be collected or needed in the state. And this is a really great living interactive LiDAR plan for the state. And I would encourage others to do similar type things to engage your user community. Those are the 5 steps. Questions, comments, criticisms. Hello. Are we there?
Bill, we're still here.
Good. I was afraid there for a minute.
Yes, thank you. Informative.
Drink from a fire hose.
So please speak up if you have questions for Phil. We'll about the process that was used, the tools he recommended using. If you have ideas for how you could customize this or what processes are most relevant to the work you're doing or the gaps that you're dealing with, we'd love your feedback.
Yeah, and that's hopefully in the next workshop, we're going to be able to get down into some of these details. Because that is your next homework for your next workshop. I would like you guys to do step 1 and step 2. It is to create your own statewide LiDAR coverage map and create your own gap map and see what you come up with going through this process. And especially that last part at the bottom, assigning gap reasons and attributes, attributing those polygons. And going through the process of thinking through that. We're not into the full-blown analysis yet. This is just preparing your data, but I think you will learn a lot by simply going through this step. So that's your homework for June.
And this dovetails into those gap reasons. As you start looking at these gaps and looking at that list of reasons, I think you're going to be able to provide us some refinement. Because again, the idea here is that we're working collectively to understand issues related to freed-up acquisition and find strategies and codify those so we can put those out as, oh, if you run into this roadblock, maybe this isn't an approach. So that'll dovetail with both those activities. One last call for questions. Anybody?
So this is Nate Roth. This is not less a question and more a comment. I've built a similar one for California. However, something that I've found very useful is to add in the ability to track older and out of date or out of specification LiDAR, because those have come in really handy a number of times in the past to give us a basis for comparison, or in some cases for data for emergency response when we discovered that we needed it.
Great point. Yes. And you should be able to, in this example here, I could easily attribute that to create a map that shows me specifically where my out of date or lower quality LiDAR is to respond to exactly to that purpose. So yeah, you're using it more than just as a planning for new acquisition. You're using it as a tool for, what data do I have and how can I use it when I need it? That's great.
All right, then.
Okay, back to you, Linda.
All right, are you seeing my screen?
Yep.
And it's the slides, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is. Yes.
All right. Just one last call before we go into this next activity. If you haven't entered your name and your organization into the chat, please do so. So the reason you all really came today, we know, is because it's time for Subuto, Trivia with Sue, our favorite part. So you can go to menti.com. Let me share the screen. Again, if I can find it. And you'll enter in the code 87505716.
Now, would you recommend we do this on our phone?
You do it in whichever environment you feel comfortable with. So again, that code is when we get into the questions, I think it'll show the code. Is that correct, Emily? At the top of the page?
Yeah, that's correct. And I'm happy to start sharing the trivia slides whenever.
Here, I'll put it into the chat. Let me do that real fast. I'll put the all right, in case you missed it, it's 87505716. And I got to tell you, these are going to be a little tougher than last time. We went easy on you last time, but this is the second workshop, so they're a little tougher.
All right, should I share trivia then?
Let's share trivia.
All right. I don't know if you need to stop sharing before I can, or
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, all good. Just didn't want to kick you off. All right. Looks like we've got people still joining. 15, 16.
Oh, come on, guys. There's 40 of you all here. This is the good. You're gonna learn stuff too. So come on,
Exposed.
log in. Menti.com. You'll have fun, I promise. There's some good ones.
Yeah, the code will still be at the top of the screen if you want to join in the middle, but I think we can. You'll be able to join at any point. So I will start the countdown on the first. Oh, we
got folks.
There they're going. I love seeing all these icons.
I know, we got hamburgers and unicorns and alligators.
Oh, it's too cute.
Wait a second, Washita, are you the Washita Parish? Are you the alligator? No. All right.
All right.
And Sue is going to host. So start the first question.
Okay, so which agency serves with USGS as the co-lead of the OMB A16 elevation theme? This one's an easy one. Well done, folks. What percentage of USGS released LiDAR products are available on the cloud through Amazon Web Services? All of it, guys. It's a good thing to know, especially because FTP isn't supported anymore on a lot of our Chromium-based browsers. Entwine is what? Oh, nobody answered the fourth one? Gosh. That's no fun. You guys are in it to win. The current version of the LiDAR-based specification is what version? It's very important for those of you who apply for the BAA. Keep track of this one. Very good. 2020 Rev A is the current version. And I'll note while we look at this one, the change in the naming convention. How many 3DEP federal best practices are there?
Give them a hint. Think lucky, people.
13, lucky 13. What percentage of US national forest lands have QL2 or better, or better 3DEP LiDAR data? And it's the 51 to 75. I think we said last time we looked, it was about 53%, if I recall correctly. And 3DEP supplanted which previous federal elevation group? It's a question that came to us from Kirk Waters, who's going deep into history. Ah, well done, folks. You guys have been around a while. It was the NDEP.
Yeah, brief peek at the leaderboard. See how everyone's doing. We're about halfway through.
So if I'm just fast but wrong all the time, I still get points, right, Emily?
I wish it worked like that. All right, next question.
So approximately how much 3DEP data total does USGS manage currently? So the total size in terabytes. Well done. And growing every day, right? Thanks to the great partnerships that we have. And how many points are in the 3DEP LiDAR point cloud holdings? This one is an interesting number. I think maybe a gazillion is maybe a little high. Good job, guys. 25 trillion points. It's kind of remarkable. So NIA concluded that most needs could be met with what minimum quality level data? Good job, 13. We'll see what the 3D Nation study tells us. We do see a trend for higher quality data across the nation. And how far into the ocean does 3DEP cover? Another question courtesy Kirk Waters with NOAA. This one's a tough one. Mean high water is the demarcation. And what portion of the United States does 3DEP try to cover? So what's our goal for coverage? The original 13 colonies in Puerto Rico. Maybe that's a hint that that's maybe not the answer. Well done, guys. I think we're about to get to the pretty pictures. There we go. So where is this LiDAR image from? And these images are all courtesy of Jason Stoker. Good job, guys.
Wow.
Way to recognize Vegas.
I didn't think they'd get these. Let's see.
Uh-oh, are we stuck?
Ah,
Image loading. Oh,
yeah, I'll give it a reload and hopefully it'll work.
Hopefully it'll pop up.
Jason's
Yeah.
images are too big.
Yeah, they're beautiful. He's got a really good trove of really beautiful images.
Yeah, there we go. It looks like we're back up right where we should be.
Cool.
Perfect.
And where is this LiDAR image from? The lake is maybe a hint.
In the river.
Yes. Nice.
Well
Good
done,
job, guys. You guys know your geography.
This one's tough. The next one's coming up's tough.
Oh yeah, this one is tough. Last one, where's this one from? You notice some agriculture, some center pivot going on. There, split decision. That one's in Utah. Okay, guys, thanks for playing.
You guys, great job.
No, I think we have, is that the same winner as our last time?
I don't know. Who is Sakura? Sakura. The
Sakura.
Sakura. Who's that? You?
That's not me. I wasn't
You
playing.
know all the answers. You can't do it.
No, I didn't play. Well, congratulations, whoever it is.
Yes, you'll have to expose yourself at some point so we'll know who this mastermind is. So who we're dealing with here. All right,
Although,
take it away.
kudos to the second and third place folks too.
All right. Well, thanks to you all for playing along. Appreciate it. Looks like we're going to get you out of here faster than expected today, which is fine. I don't know about you, but we're having a beautiful day. Next workshop, just a quick roundup, is June 8th from 3 to 5 p.m. We'll be focusing on those gap strategies and plans of action. You'll probably hear from us in the interim, prompting you to go through those reasons and start developing some ideas for strategies. Your homework, as Phil laid out, was to map and attribute your coverage and your gaps. Please take a stab at this. I mean, the whole purpose of this is to help you move forward, is to be constructive and productive and be an assist. So, and if you have any questions along the way, I encourage you to reach out to Phil and ask him about that. The recordings, as well as any materials, are published at the NSGIC Learning link, and we'll announce, once they're published, we'll announce those at via the NSGIC 3-Dep interest group. So with that, I'll say, are there any final questions, comments? Check the chat real fast.
Yeah, there was one question posted. I missed it during the 5 steps, and it says, can you describe Washington's staffing/management situation for completing these 5 steps? Fully staffed and funded, where do they attain funding? Is Joanne on the phone?
I didn't see her on the call.
Okay.
I can start, Phil, and you can fill in. I do know that they have the benefit of having a strong LiDAR program in their geology department. Is that, and that was mostly in response to some geophysical hazards, but I'll ask Phil and Sue to jump in as they're aware.
They also have state level funding for that purpose, which I think is fairly unique. I don't know how many states have gone to that extent of actually having funding for LiDAR acquisition.
Sue, do you have any insights on the Washington approach, like why they're able to do all the cool stuff they can?
I'll be honest with you, my recollection is failing me, but I think you're on spot. I think there was some legislation in relation to the Oso landslide that assisted them with LiDAR acquisition, seeing the need for particularly geologic hazard applications to LiDAR.
Let me suggest you can go to the learning link and see the recording, listen to the recording, watch the recording from the last presentation where I know Joanne went into great detail about that. I'm just having a brain fart on remembering everything she said, but I know she did talk at some length about how their program was managed and funded. So it's definitely was a lot of information in the recording.
Yeah, and we're grateful to Washington and other states as well, Nate, California, and other folks that are active in the process, whether you're able to achieve a lot of things that help other states, provide models for other states like Washington, or whether you're down in the weeds and trying to make it happen and talking about your challenges and the way that you're addressing your challenges. So that's why the state team is so important. If you're not on the state team and you're interested, please let us know. We are starting a new project year, as you're probably aware, here in the next month or so. And it's where we get a lot of work done. It's where we share a lot of information, and it's where we benefit from things like the work in Washington. Oh, Emily did want me to post, there were some difficulties because the last workshop was in, and Em, you can correct me, because the last workshop was in the mid-year meeting, it had some permissions wrapped on it. And so some folks had a little trouble accessing the first workshop. If you have any issues, Emily's put her contact information into the chat. Contact her if you have any, and she'll make sure that you get access to that information. Thank you, Emily. Any other questions, comments? Go ahead, Em.
Oh, just, yeah, we're working on getting everybody in to make sure that these permission issues don't keep happening, but please do email me. That's really the quickest way to get access. So happy to do it. Takes 2 seconds. So thank you.
All right, last call for questions. I'll hold you till 4:10. How's that for us East Coast folks? And thank you to Emily. Thank you for Sue, and thank you to Phil. And feel free to reach out with follow-up questions, suggestions, and we'll be filling you all in on what's coming up in June for the next workshop. So thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, guys.